Welcome to the fourth and final session of Aarhus Symposium 2016. We hope that you enjoyed your break, that you're now just as eager for this session as we are. So without further ado, it is our great pleasure to welcome our experienced moderator of this session, journalist and news anchor at TV2 News, Charlotte Beder.
Thank you. There's this phrase or saying, may you live in interesting times. And to many it sounds like a blessing, but I believe it's more or less meant as some sort of curse. And if there's one sector living in indeed very interesting times, it is the financial sector right now, the banking sector. The interest rates are low, practically negative somewhere. There's hardly any inflation. Growth is lagging. The image, let's just say it could be better. And the only thing larger than the threat of disruption coming up is the amount of regulation coming towards the sector. So what is it like to lead a bank through interesting times? How do you do it? Who better to ask that question than the CEO of one of the strongest banks in Sweden, Birgitte Bonnesen. So welcome to you. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about how to lead in a time of a paradigm shift. But first of all, I just want to say I'm really happy to be here, and I'm truly impressed by the whole symposium and the way that it's been organized, the speakers who are here. I think it's impressive. But you know what? This is also my school. I am also a graduate from here. This is what it looked like. More than 30 years ago, I was a graduate from Handelshögskolan. And this is the day I became the CEO of Swedbank. So in hindsight, what would I have wanted to know? You know what? I would have wanted to have a message from the universe saying, relax, we have you covered. There's no way that you will ever be able to imagine the kind of professional life that you will have. No way. And I assure you, it probably goes for you too. The thing too is living in interesting times. I have been with Swedbank for 30 years. And you know what? It's been truly interesting times. I have been through a number of crises, and I've always happened to find myself very close to these crises. You know, the first one was a big banking crisis in the beginning of the 90s. We went through the dot-com crisis. I was heading the financial institutions when Lehman went bust, and I covered the US investment banks. I spent most of my time in New York. And that was incredibly interesting. Banking is a very, very exciting industry to be in, believe it or not. This is my office. Globally, it's tiny. But Swedish and Baltics, we are the largest retail bank in Sweden and in the 3 Baltic countries. We have 14,000 people working at Swedbank. And we have 8 million customers in these 4 countries, almost 1,660,000 corporates. And we're a listed company with a market cap of 230 billion. I think that when you talk about how to lead a bank in a paradigm shift, you need to talk about identity. This is where it all started. Swedbank goes back to 1820. It was the first savings banks in Sweden. And the mission was to combat poverty and to get ordinary people to save for a better future. And today, this is what it looks like today. So what you'll find today is that you'll find the identity of the past translated into today, and this is what is going to carry us into the future as well. We are still a bank for the many. We are a bank for the many corporates and the many private individuals. We have a very strong vision and mission, as you see there, and we are a value-driven bank. We have always been a value-driven bank. Being a value-driven bank as a listed company is something different. But it's also something that gives us great strength, because when you have a compass to relate to, you can do that in relation to all your different stakeholders, one of which is the market. A paradigm shift for the financial sector, these are the 4 things that are coming into play. And you know what a paradigm shift means. What it means is that a paradigm, when you come into this, it has a different life. It develops exponentially. You know, nothing happens, and then everything happens at once. So to lead a big company in a time that you know is a paradigm shift, it's going through a paradigm shift, it's all about timing. And you know, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. The changed customer behavior is the core of everything. You know, it's the Internet of Things. It's the fact that customers today want to interact, and probably all of you already do that. You interact digitally with your bank. Most people also want to have a physical contact at some point in time in their lives. You know, often when big things happen. You know, your parents die, you get married, you have children, you buy a house. We see, you know, even today that you can do everything on the internet. You still want to come in and see somebody. You want somebody to tell you that you can afford it, or you can't. Changed customer behavior is also about the way that customers react today, is that you want an answer instantly. And you want us to know what you have done when you come in to one channel. If you initiate something in the mobile bank, and then you call the telephone bank, you want us to know what you already did. You want us to know what you've done before. You almost want us to know what you'll be doing next. And the third thing is that you want instant gratification. You want us to see you. This is what we see. Customers want us to see them, you know, and recognize them. This is the same thing if you're on Amazon or Netflix or, you know, all others. You know, they send you these mails and see, now that you watch this, maybe you would like to see this. Sometimes I think, well, this is a great idea. Or sometimes I think, but this is crap. Or sometimes I think, but how do they know? Or, you know, I really don't want them to know. But basically, you just need to get past that, because this is the way that we see not only many of the devices that you are using and the sites, but this is also what we see from our customers that want to talk to us. Swedbank is a bank that is based on an omni-channel strategy, and I'm sure that most of you know that this is sort of the way of the future. You can interact in many different channels, and all the channels interact with each other, and you expect them to. That requires a lot from a bank that comes from a relatively sort of old way of working with customers. You know, banking was based on sort of the meeting between individuals, or a meeting that happened on an exchange. These were actually the only two ways till now, where we interact in a social space that is more or less anonymous. The second thing is that there are lots of new, and I mean really lots of new tech companies coming in. And for Swedbank, with a head office in Sweden, this is a privilege, I can tell you. Because in Sweden, and especially in Stockholm, you see this innovative tech and technology development that springs from a very, very old Swedish tradition. Sweden is more or less built on tech. This comes from the forest industry, the mines, in order to exploit that more efficiency. This was how Volvo came about, SKF, eventually Ericsson. Lots of these big companies, they come out of this. And this has also given, very strong institutions in academia and research on developing technology. And today in Stockholm, you see both capital available and you see technology initiatives. So you see a really vibrant tech I would just say community almost. Some of them are fintechs, and they range from crowdfunding of capital to new ways of aggregating information. They range over a huge number of financial services. Some of them will live, some of them won't. We also, a big bank in the Baltic countries. We have, as in Sweden too, almost 30% market share in all daily banking products. And Baltics is they're new economies, their independence only goes back 25 years. They came from nothing, and they jumped generations. They also have something else. They have great ambition. Great ambition. And that's such a valuable driver for change. They want to be the best all the time. They want to be the best all the time. Just think about this. Which means that they're always ahead of everybody else, which for a bank like ours is great. So, when Sweden are doing another report, Baltics have already done it. Uncertainty in the macro environment. I think that we always think that we are living in interesting and very unusual times. And we always thought that there was only one Japan. We were studying Japan and we were thinking about, isn't this interesting that every time they take away government initiatives to get growth going, everything just falls flat. Why is this happening? They must do something completely wrong. Or it's the Japanese culture. These people are so different. And now, this, I think, is the biggest threat and what we fear the most. Not only Sweden, but lots of other countries in Europe. We've had negative interest rates for almost 2 years. And it's such an interesting time. I can't find another word, actually. But to see the central bank coming out with negative interest rates, and you have the entire financial sector that isolates the customers from the negative interest rates. Imagine that because this is what's happening. So nobody in Sweden, if you're a private individual, you are not hit by the negative interest rate at all. Banks isolate. We floor everything at 0. And initially, to tell you a secret in this small room, initially why we did it was that, we couldn't figure out how the hell to change the IT systems to allow for negative interest rates. It was impossible. And it was the same thing for everybody else. And we thought that this is just a temporary thing. And living in a sort of a negative interest rate with relatively low growth in Europe, not picking up, we have actually a very strong growth in Sweden. The Swedish macro is strong. The Baltic countries' macro is strong. But we also have a completely different geopolitical issue to look at today. In Baltics, it's not the immigration, because I think that Estonia had 10 immigrants last year. But there is another geopolitical threat that you can imagine. There are, embargoes, and there are sanctions on the border between the countries and Russia, and it's a risk to work with every single day. In Sweden, it's about a different thing. It's about the immigration, and it's about the populism that we see growing in Sweden as we see it in the rest of Europe, and we also see it globally. I think personally, this is our biggest concern. This is our biggest concern. And for a bank like ours, we are an inclusive bank. We are the bank for the many. Which means that when you get 1,000 immigrants in 1 year, you can think whatever you like in your own time. But when you come into the bank in the morning, you are there to represent a bank for the many, the inclusive bank for the many. And I don't think I have to go into what that means for lots of people. It's been a huge challenge, but also a very exciting challenge for us. Then there are new regulations coming in. They fall in 2 different buckets. One is the regulation on capital, which means that to make us strong and to add more capital, what it does is that it actually increases the price level in for credit, and it also puts huge demand on banks to be really well capitalized. Swedbank is one of the most well capitalized banks in Europe today. And that is because we have a very cautious way of looking at capital. We maintain a buffer at all times, which I always call the operational buffer. Because I don't want to go to the finance inspection to talk every time we need to do more. We need to be able to lend. We need to be able to invest. And in order to do that, you need to be strong. The second bucket is about regulation that is there to make it easier, to make it more simple, more transparent of being a private individual sourcing banking services. It's easier to change banks and easier to understand what you pay for. It's, you can aggregate information, etc. This is good. Many banks complain a lot about it. I personally think, if it's good for the customer, we just have to deal with it. Just get on with it. And this is what we do, because in the end, this is one of the things that will change the entire industry. And I think that, you just get on with it. This is our journey. This is the paradigm shift that is happening now that I was talking about, the 4 factors that come into it, and that, is gradually determine the pace of this, who we are. This is what is going to guide us through this, and where we want to go. When I came into this job, it was quite a turbulent time for the bank. The last CFO before me left the same day as I came in. And I had 2 months as a trainee, and this was what I call it. I didn't really know. I knew that they had this huge search thing going on, and they had a number of candidates for the job. But I was thinking, okay, if I get this job, what will I do? The first thing I will do is that I will completely change the executive management. And the next thing I will do is that I will actually set up a target picture. This is where we're going. This is who we are. This is who we'll be when we are, have come through this paradigm shift. And this is what we did. I started out with a new executive management very quickly because I've had time to think about it. I found people that were truly competent, that really knew their thing. I found people that were willing to execute, not talk so much, but get things done. I found people that understood that things are changing. It's changing in a big way. I mean, big way. And the fourth thing, that is probably the most important thing, is people who understood our values, who we are in Swedbank. And then we set up this target picture. And the target is actually not very sexy. The target is, you know what, when we are through this, we are still the leading retail bank in 4 countries. But the thing is, we'll look completely different. So my focus in leading us through this is embracing change. It's about talking about, so what are the most important things? One is, and this is what I did when I was in the Baltics, where I completely changed the organization, do lots and lots of pilots, because there's no time for all reports and studies. Do pilots, some of them fly, some don't. And this is for you, if you've ever been on a trading floor, you know what is the most important thing? You need to know when to cut losses. And the thing is that you can do the same thing. You start pilots, some people have really brilliant ideas. You just say, oh, well, go ahead, do it. We do it in a limited scope. You'll see some of it when it fails, you just kill it. And then you go on to the next. Change is something that is a constant. And I don't know why we tend to make it so incredibly dramatic, because it's not. We all as individuals change every day. And banking is certainly an area of change. The other one was collaboration. And here, drawing on some of our most important values, is open. Open, simple, and caring. Open. I wanted to open up the bank completely. Open it up to the fintechs. So, I have these things. I meet somebody at the coffee machine, and he comes up to me and he shows me his phone, and he says, you know what? Look at this app. And I look at it, and there's the most delicious app, that is an aggregator of all kinds of information. And I think, holy Moses, this is, we are so far from this. And the next thing I think is, it's not ours. And the third thing I think is, can we work with these people? Who can call them? How can we figure out? Will they come in and work with us? And as we have so many customers, it's not an easy sell. It's not difficult to sell Swedbank to these. Many of them really want to come and work with us because we are so big. So this is what we're doing. We're figuring out, so how do we do this? How do we get all these people in? How do we link up with those who are the best in the area? that we are looking at. It can be savings products, it can be aggregators, it can be, we just launched an app with a, with an equity, a model where you can, it's actually like a game. And in this game, you learn how to invest in securities. Everything from bonds to stock and all other derivatives. But you're not allowed to have your own, you're not allowed really to do it with your own money or real money until you reach a certain level. So there are lots of these things that we introduce all the time, new apps that are connected to the financial services. But it's also about collaboration internally. And I have this thing that I think that we can never, ever allow an individual or a group of people to define an area. We cannot let this bank be limited by the competence of one person or one group or one division. Because you know what? Then they're sitting there, it may be 10 people, it may be 500 people, and they all think that they know the truth. But it's not true. Today, the only way of working is to reach out and figure out, this is what I'm really good at, this is what these people are good at, this is how I link in with them, and this is how they link in with us. So this is a demand that I have on the people I work with today. This goes cross the bank, it goes cross geographies, it goes cross business lines. We are setting up stable teams. We're working in a completely new way, where you have processes from end to end. You have IT people that used to sit on their own island. They're moving in gradually. So, you have the customer here, and then you have all the processes from when you start looking at a mortgage till you actually had the mortgage, you paid it back. You have the IT people, you have the risk people, compliance people, you have everybody else, you have the client executives, the offering people, those who decide the price, etc., etc. You figure out how to set that up in processes. Completely new way of working. Collaboration, this is a code word. It's also collaboration with the market. It's Swedbank is a bank with a huge number of investors. It's the second mostly widely spread stock in Sweden. But we also have 90% of the stock is floating. So what it means is, for me, I don't have sort of a nice, I can't go and get a hock anywhere. So if you are an SEB, you have the Wallenbergs. If you are Nordea, you always have Wahlroos in Finland who is standing up and saying, this is what we'll do. In Swedbank, it's not like that. 40% of the stock is outside of the Nordic countries. It's floated in the US and the UK. So you have a really important stakeholder pool to work with there. We need to collaborate. We need to open up the bank to them too, to become incredibly transparent. Say exactly what I'm thinking. This is what I'll do. This is how much it will cost. This is what I think we'll have as a revenue on this. This is what will happen here. And then I have to come back and say, you know what, it didn't happen. Or I have to go back and say, we had an amazing third quarter. Yeah, and sometimes it really goes really well. And that is part of the way that I have to simulate all these things. But the most important thing, next to what is coming next, is the customers. We need to stay really, really close. And I think banking and financial service sector has always had a bit of an arrogance, like we knew something that customers didn't know. You know what? This is crap. It really is. Because in the end, if we don't reach out and have a conversation where we can capture what customers need, we're gone. And we should be in many ways. And maybe I should say something about data. I don't think I dare to after the last session here. But a lot of this comes from all the data that we have on customers. And the thing is that customers, they expect us to know. They expect us to know. We are a lot further ahead in the Baltic countries where we know how to work with this. We have the right people in there. Sweden is a bit behind, which is good. So now I'm sending all the information to Baltics. They deal with it. They send it back. It goes out. And then, of course, employees. This is the most important thing, basically. That people are happy working at Swedbank, that they feel challenged. And also, the thing is, we have already decided where we want to go. So every one of these 14,000 people actually need to buy in. You make a decision every day, more or less, when you go to work. I'm not so naive that I don't think that many do it because they need to make a living. But my wish is that this goes out to as many as possible. And the thing is also the fact that we are different in one aspect, and that is that we have a very big commitment to the societies in which we engage. So we do lots of work with schools, we do lots of charities, we work with local community in a very, very active way. So where are you going, all of you? Think about this. And I hope really that, message from the universe, I think they have you covered. You can never imagine what will happen. Never. So, this was all. Thank you.
So, if someone had told you when you were here 30 years ago that you'd be here today, CEO of Swedbank, what would you have said?
Oh, I would have said, just relax, hang in there, go with the flow. Yeah, we have you covered.
That's great. You said that you're going through a paradigm shift.
Yes.
And you're sure when you get out on the other side, Swedbank will still be the biggest retail bank?
Yes.
How sure are you of that? There's Apple Pay, there's peer-to-peer lending, there's disruption all around you.
Yes.
Why should people want to use an old-fashioned bank 5-10 years from now?
But the thing is, in 5 years, we won't be an old-fashioned bank. We won't. We will be a bank that integrates with all these new, players that come in and disintermediate us. We may be a utility that provides all this through some of these really, really new ways of working. So the ambition is to be there. We need to have this ambition because today this is the, this is the way we're moving. We're moving with this flow.
And how are you going to make money in the future?
Yes, that's a very interesting thing too. Yeah. I know that you think that everything will be for free. But, it's not even today. You think it is, but it's not. And that's because you don't see the money that's being exchanged behind, merchant to merchant, business to business. There's lots of things that are happening that actually have a price. And it's the same thing that will happen when you see this. I just saw this card that was provided. It's a fintech in the UK. They came out with a credit card where there's absolutely no fees at all. And you can become a customer in 5 minutes on the internet. And, either they will not live because it's not for free, and everybody knows that, or they will find a way of making money with merchants because this is the way it's done. That's one part. The other part of it is that when you look at everything that requires capital, and that is all lending, that will continue to be, at least in the medium term, something that is not so easy to copy. So that is where we see banks still playing a really big role. That is in, and when you look at Swedbank, the more than 50% of the income in Swedbank comes from the lending from mortgages, and on top of that, all the corporate banking lending comes. So it's, I think the lending is going to be more, this is going to be more core, and then all the transaction banking, we need to work with everybody else.
We've had a debate in Denmark about negative interest rates. You mentioned it yourself.
Yes.
You don't have the IT infrastructure to
that was
take
how
that
it was
forward.
initially, yeah.
But
yeah.
if we have this interest rate environment for a
Yes.
few more years,
Yes.
will you have to introduce negative interest rates to private customers?
It's a very good question. I hope not. I'll tell you that I will. I think that the banking industry in Sweden will work as long as we can without doing it.
But being a market leader, you will be the one to have to
Yeah.
decide, right?
Yeah, in a way, but still, yeah. I will. I think that should take us to a complete extreme to go into negative interest for private individuals.
Sort of answer that question just as Danish banks do. Let's look at some of the questions that have come in from the audience. The most popular one being this one, personal question. Did you have to overcome other struggles being a woman in the financial industry than your male counterparts?
Yes. You know what? No, I'm not saying yes, I did. I'm saying it's a very Danish question. I can say this because I'm Danish. I think it's valid. I think it really is valid. And I also think that it's difficult to say. I think that what was important is that you understand who you are and you understand the game that's happening around you. And I don't mean game in respect of some people are playing games. I mean the way that we are different. Women are different from men. We often think differently. You come into also it's an industry that has been extremely male-dominated. However, I am the second female CEO in Swedbank. Our board has introduced a policy years ago that we have a 40-60 rule, and that goes for board, and it goes for executive management, and it goes for a level down. So you can never have more than 40 or 60 in the gender balance. I think that influenced Swedbank a lot. It's not really a choice. So it's, I think gender is an important question. And it's something that we talk a lot about. Now everybody has to. But I don't know. It's difficult to say whether there are things that I had to overcome. Probably yes.
But does it worry you that students of today
Yes, it does. Definitely.
ask this question?
Yes, it does.
Why?
And I think that's worse. Yeah.
Why?
Because I think that, I think we should be past that. We should have been past this long ago. And just the fact that you don't have, like men has to stay at home when they have children in Denmark. I think that's, that's somewhere that you could start. It's, I think that there are things that are really, really basic. Really basic.
Let's pass that on to politicians around the country. There's another one, you're speaking of Denmark versus Sweden. A question here, as a Danish economics student, why should I choose to work in Sweden and not in Denmark?
I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. I only worked in Denmark for 2.5 years, 30 years ago. And I can tell you that there was once I was headhunted to talk to a Danish company. And alluding to the first question, you know what? I declined. And I declined. It was not because I didn't want to come back to Denmark. I really, really did. But I was a single mother. And I couldn't see myself being a single mother in Denmark at that time. And that is sort of 17 years ago. Because when I was talking to them about how to work, you know, it was not so much a focus on my capabilities or the actual task at hand. It was more like, here we are in from, 8 till 6 or so, and what if the child is sick? Can you stand? No, there were lots of things around it that made me think, no, this is not the right time of my life. And then things developed, and, things were great in Sweden.
Are you ever coming back to Denmark, you think?
I don't think so. Yeah, maybe when I stop working. But I don't think I'll come back here to work. I have a great job.
I'm sure you do. Now, take us back. There's a question here. Going back to one of the crisis situations of your career. How do you cope with stress and pressure under financial crisis? And can you provide example of situations that occurred through these periods?
Yes, I actually can. When Lehman went, I lost 5 kilos in 1 week. I thought that was a very good thing. But it was a terrible experience. But I have another example that alludes a bit to what we talked about in the previous session here. I don't know whether any of you were listening in on cyber. I was heading our operations in the Baltic countries, and we were attacked. We had a cyber attack in Latvia that actually came from a number of anonymous phones that send out text messages. And that completely, almost brought the bank down. But what happened was that it initiated a run on the bank. And how do you react in these, you become very calm. And you only think about, what is the problem? Do you have the right people in place? Do we have connections to people in society around us that will support you? So you don't really, for me at least, I don't think about how I feel at all. I just think about how to solve the problem, and that the people who are incremental, who are really, really important for solving them, that they are well. I make sure, do we have food, do we have this, do we have that? And we worked for almost to 48 hours before everything was under control. And there was a question before about how can this happen, and society as a whole doesn't know. We had the Prime Minister go on television and say, it's a hacker attack. So, the bank is safe. But I think for me, it was the same thing with Lehman. When Lehman went, we saw that coming, and we had lots of things building up to it. But you just stay extremely focused.
But in your darkest hour during the financial crisis or this situation, did you ever envision how it would look if it didn't go well?
No.
How could you keep that thought out of your mind?
Because what does it mean that it doesn't go right? I mean, you think about what can happen, but you set up, it's actually not like that. You set up a couple of scenarios, and then you start mitigating all the risks. And one is, we'll completely run out of money, which we did. And the central bank had to open their vaults at midnight and, start driving out money to the cash machines. So, but you set up, this is what you do, or this at least was what we did. It was the same thing with Lehman. It was the same thing with other crises that we've had. In that situation, you become extremely good at scenario, drawing up different scenarios, and then you start mitigating. If this happens, this is what we'll do. If this happens, this is what we'll do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, please answer. Time is going so quickly. another question. You had a wonderful slide that showed us all that employees are the most important.
Yeah.
And almost as important as employees are customers. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, please answer this question.
Yes.
Is the bank mission to earn money, or is it to service customers? Should bonuses in the financial sector depend more on customer satisfaction? How much do you mean this with customers being so integral to you?
We don't have bonuses.
At all?
No. We have it in some parts of on the trading floor, and we have it in the
Then you
asset
have it, right?
management. Yeah. No, but we don't have it
You
for
don't have one.
14,000. I don't have one. I don't have one. Nobody in executive management has one. There's nobody in the retail, in the whole retail area that has.
Why don't you take the final step and go to the trading floor as well then?
Yeah, you know what? We have 90 people that actually has it, and out of 14,000. I think that's very well done. But going to the trading floor, I think it will disappear one day. But we're not ready yet. And I won't take that risk in not getting the best. So this is why we're sort of, But I hope
But
we'll
you can get
there.
the best
Yeah.
CEO without a bonus.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Absolutely.
checking. Just
yeah.
checking.
But that is a different thing. Or different, it's not. But I have these interesting discussions with American investors. They look at me and say, but if you don't have a bonus, how can you motivate yourself? And I think that's a very interesting question. But I also think that I work in a Swedish Baltic company. It springs from a completely different culture. It's the bank's culture as such is very different, and if you compare with some of our competitors, we have a different, I think, compensation culture because we don't have it.
Maybe then you just have a higher basic pay.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No.
What do you earn?
I earn 13 million a year.
Danish or Swedish?
Swedish.
You can do the math. But back to the question, is the mission to earn money, or is it to provide good customer service?
Exactly. But you know what? When I come back to employees, it's actually because if you don't have employees that are happy with the bank, you won't have customers that are happy. It all goes through the people who meet with customers every day, or those who actually develop services for customers. And if they think the bank is crap and they don't buy into the culture or the mission or where we're going, it doesn't matter. And this is why I think it's so important to start with the employees and get them to work so close with the customers.
But you just told me before we started this session that you have a return on invested.
Equity? Yes.
A return on equity around 15%.
15.8.
How does that help the customer? Because I suspect the money comes from them.
Of course it does. But it helps the customer in the way that we are able to invest in new facilities all the time. It also helps in the fact that you can buy a share in us. And many do. And the third thing is that we need it to be strongly capitalized so we can continue lending. So in that way, it does.
Right. Now, when you look out in this room, and you have to be frank now, there's a question here from Ebbe. What qualities do you think new graduates lack the most? You hire people.
Yes. What qualities do you think new graduates? It's actually really difficult. I think that many of the graduates that we get in, I have this, we just recruited a innovations head. And she said, you know what, I won't come and work with Swedbank unless I get to interview the CEO. I thought it was great. So she interviewed me, And at the end of the interview, she said, okay, I'll come and work for you. And I think that, you have many, I don't know what qualities you knew, but what I see is, I see, or what we look for is people who understand what is going on out there. People who understand that you cannot be expected to come in and sit in a small cubicle and do the same things over and over again. Nothing in financial services is going to work that way. So it's a lot of flexibility. It's an awareness of both the macro, but also how societies are going to change, and the fact that you can relate to that and then use everything that you learned here in that context. It sounds very fluffy, yeah. But this is actually what I think is the most important thing. When I talk to people and people who come in and work in the bank, this is always what I check, because I think that today there's so many brilliant people out there. And you see for the graduates, they come in with sky-high levels, and they really, some have double exams that they've taken at the same time. It always scares me, because I'm looking for personality too. There's so many out there where the kind of basic, understanding, or they have their exams. But you need to have a personality. You need to be bold. You need to, this is what we often look for.
Well, let's stay in the employee department for the next question. Do you see the introduction of your robot customer service agent, Nina, as the first step towards laying off employees in order to cut costs? Do you have any specific plans to do it?
What we see is we're in a situation where we have huge generations, or not huge, but we have generation of people who are going to retire in the coming 2 to 3 years, which is very good for us. So we will not get into to the same degree as many others that we'll have to lay off people in, in other areas. But we will be a lot fewer people working in financial services and in Swedbank, definitely.
How many? You look 5, 10 years into the future?
It's really difficult, A lot of them we will work with fintechs, so a lot will be, we are automated. We're introducing robots into the, the back offices. And, it's... So I think that where we really need people is on the development side, and we need it in customer interaction, corporate banking. Corporate banking is going to be huge. It's just going to develop. And this is where we need people. We also need people who come in and work differently. You come in, you're onboarded, you work with us for 3 to 5 years, then you go somewhere else and work. And then some come back, and, we need to get into this kind of, we need new people to come in with new education, a lot of, thinking about the future, innovation, not only digitalization, but also people who meet with customers differently. It will be Sundays, it will be Friday nights, it will be Saturdays, it will be a completely different way of working. So it will take different people.
So you're the last CEO of Swedbank who's been in the bank for 30 years? Worked your way up?
Yes, I actually think so. I think so.
Do you ever consider it a handicap that you've been 30 years in the same organization?
Do I think of it as a handicap? The fact that I'm just thrilled about this job makes me... The conversations that I had in the first 2 months was a lot about the fact that I've been here for a long time. That was one thing. And the second thing is to find all the people who were thinking completely different from myself. And then I also had a huge advantage, I think, of having worked in Baltics, where nobody was, the eldest was 45. And they had a completely different way of thinking, and they were sort of constantly challenging me. And they are now moving into management at a group level to a different degree. So I think a lot about that. And I also think a lot about part of my role is to finding the next generation. So, in making others grow, so I can sort of, I know that I will not have a next job in the bank. I will leave, go away and do other things. And then there will be sort of a next generation that's already ready.
And now you consequently call it a bank. You call it a bank.
Yes.
The bank. I will
Yes.
not have a new job at
Yes.
the bank.
Yes.
The next question is from David. Is Danske Bank CIO has said we are not a bank. We're a technology firm with banking products.
Yeah.
If you need to think differently about your bank, is this a way you should be thinking of Swedbank?
Call it whatever you like. We may be a fintech in the end. I don't know. I mean, it's been about IT for a long time. I think this is a, floskel. What I don't know. It's a bit of a stereotype. Yeah, you can call it whatever you like. We're in such a big transformation that we may be something completely different in the end. What I'm saying is that Swedbank will continuously be a provider of financial services to the many, to the mass market, as we are today. It may be in a completely different form. We may be a utility. I don't know. But this is where we're going. So we figure out all these different people that we're going to work with along the way.
It's very interesting to hear a CEO of a bank say, I don't know what we're going to be. Can you lead a bank towards something that you don't know what is?
Yes, you can.
How do you do that?
Because what I said initially was that we have this target picture that is very clear, that we will continue to be a provider of financial services to the many households and the many businesses. And if you start to qualify this, you limit people's minds. So every decision that we make has to do about, is it true to our values? And is it helping provide future services to the many? Because this is the segment this is where we are. And in 4 countries. So I think it's really important not to, you have to have this very clear. And I see this in all investment decisions that we make. There's a very clear, you see immediately, this is outside. No, we're not going to do it. So you see immediately, it's actually, yeah.
Right. For one final question, lots of questions that we didn't actually get to, but one here. Has anything in your career, looking back over the years, all the time you spent in this university, has anything prepared you for this, you called it Japan, this prolonged no-growth scenario?
No.
Do you know how to handle it?
I think that what has prepared, you can say, did anything prepare us for Lehman going bust? Did anyone see what would happen? No. So you cannot prepare for these things. What you can do is that you can make sure that you sort of have the adequate education, which I think I had, and then that you surround yourself with the right people, and you stay true to who you are. You never distance yourself. I think that for me, that has been the thing. But there are lots of things that you can never. You can't prepare for life, but you can learn how to sort of go with the flow and enjoy it, and deal with things that come in.
Do you ever fear that you will fail on your mission for Swedbank?
If I said yes, I wouldn't have this job.
We'll take that as an answer. Thank you so much. Let's give Birgitte a round of applause.
As the students from the other auditoriums arrive, we would like to thank you, Birgitte Bonnesen, for your interesting presentation and perspectives. We're truly grateful for your contribution. Please accept this gift as a sign of our gratitude. We also thank you, Charlotte Beder, for your engagement in this year's symposium. Please accept this gift as well, as we are truly thankful.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.